Hello and everyone, welcome to Mr. V's Literally Just Airplanes, and welcome to this rendition of my podcast. And today I'm going to be talking about the Queen of the Skies, the Boeing 747. But instead of talking about the actual airplane, I'm going to be talking about how to properly load it and the stuff going on inside of the airplane. There's a lot that goes on inside of the airplane, and a lot of people just think you put this stuff inside of it, you strap it down, and it's all done. But actually, there's a lot of process to it, and it can take some time and a lot of practice to get used to it. But really, it's more of just getting the hang of the locks and everything, and making sure that you know what to work with, and it's a whole lot of fidgeting. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty interesting actually. So in this picture, you see the CL452, and when I mean 452 is the inside of the deck has, in the 400 model, they have 34 models of decks. And what I mean by that is each deck that you see here has 34 lanes to it. So as you see the man in the corner there pushing the cargo into it, so when the cargo loads up, you hit a loader. The loader goes up to the airplane pushes the cargo into it. The cargo goes up to the nose first or to the back. Once the cargo is actually into the airplane, there's a bunch of locks on it, as you can see. The locks are secured by the whole mechanism of this is really interesting. So if you actually look down at those big black circles in the middle, those are the wheels, and those control the load mechanism of the airplane. So once the pallets actually go onto the airplane will push it back. What I mean by that is, if you see those little like control box areas where it says C3 or C18, there's a little knob there, and those knobs say load, unload, and little sectors. So each sector is a square. The load controls the entire column of the rollers. Once the rollers are using the column, the load, you hold down load. So one person's going to have to stand either in the front or the back. This is usually a two-person job when it comes to smaller cargo like this in the picture. Usually if it's smaller like this, then it's easier to maneuver with, and it should slide right on the rollers. There have been instances where we've loaded some cargo and the cargo got stuck because it's so heavy. Like today we had 10,000 pound pallets, and it would sit on there, and you couldn't even pull it on there because it was getting stuck on the wheel. When that happens, usually you push it with a bunch of guys. You get a bunch of guys up there, or people up there, and push it, or you just ram it. And what I mean ramming it is you get the front pallet, you ram the back pallet, and make sure it gets stuck on there. If it doesn't get stuck on there, you know something's wrong, because the wheels should be able to pull up to 68 kilograms. But that doesn't mean all the time it's going to pull that. So if you look at all those wheels on there, it starts from the nose of the airplane to the tail of the airplane. And then there's different subdivisions and sectors of locks and guides. If it doesn't sit on the guide properly, it will get stuck on the guide. If it doesn't sit on the wheel properly, it will not move. Now, some airplanes, such as the 767 and some of the older Airbus models, do not have guides. You actually have to push the cargo, and it's a lot of work. With the guides and the mechanisms to control the pallets and the cargo, it's really nice. And especially with some of the equipment and cargo that goes onto the 747s, there's a lot. And it's a tedious game if you don't know how to communicate with your crew, but it's an easy game once you know how to work with your crew. And a lot of people don't really know how to communicate very well, so you won't see as much of that in the workforce. So if you keep looking at this picture, there's a bunch of other stuff you have to notice. I understand you see that this is the 747's interior. There's also a lower deck as well for other types of cargo, usually smaller freight and mailboxes. There's on the end, if you look all the way down, it's kind of hard to see, but if you see the other group of people all the way down section of the nose, there is a safety net. And that safety net, part of the 747 is lower than the back of the 747. So if you push a bunch of cargo in the back, it could get caught and destroy the top part of the fuselage. You don't want that. So once it gets to that level, you want to stop. Now each pallet is set up differently, so you can get every single load in there. Like I said, some of the 7.4s can hold 36 pallets, some of them even more than that. And you have to make sure they get in properly, and each lock is up. If there's an empty space, you have to still put the locks up, so if one of the lock fails, it's a fail-safe method. It's supposed to go over the lock, and it should be good for that. If you see that the lock is not going down, you can put weight on it, guide it, and make sure that it goes up into the actual area. Sometimes the amount of cargo we get with the 7.4 differentiates from medical supplies, automotive supplies, military equipment, machines, parts, cadavers, a bunch of stuff that you would think in cars. Like I keep saying with cars, you literally get a Bentley one day, and you might get basically parts of all aircraft stuff. It's ridiculous. It's cool too. You see a bunch of different things. I've only worked there for a week now, and I've seen everything from cadavers to medical equipment to face masks. During this COVID supply, we've got over so many boxes of COVID stuff going through there. It gets to the point where it's like, how much can we fund for this? Now, the three airlines that I've worked with so far are South China and their 777s, Atlas with their 747-400s, and Cathay with their 747s 8 series. Now, the 748s are so much nicer because they are set up so much easier. The cargo goes in easily, and the locks are easily to work with. Now, the 744s, of course, they're smaller and they're set up differently. You'd think they're set up the same, but they're set up a little bit differently. Now, the circuit control box on all of these 7.4s have different types of segues in them. So when you walk into the 7.4, it's huge. It's very wide. And having my first time actually be on one of the 7.4s, it just blew my mind to see what the actual size of this thing was. And when you're a kid seeing these big jumbos flying over, you don't really put into effect what they carry. Now, some of the supplies that we carry go immediately off into trucks. Some of them go onto pallets and racks, and they sit on those racks until the next plane comes in and we load those on. Now, the 7.4's got, like I said, 2 decks and a nose. Now, the nose does open. It opens up and you can put longer cargo in or necessary materials that need to go in. Now, the dangerous good stuff, we've had explosives being put on. We've had different types of flammable liquids and other types of liquids that are not used in regular day basis. So when usually you see that, it plays a different perspective into the role of it. Now, if you look at the next picture, the next picture shows what it looks like in a 7.4-800. Now, you can tell that there's a little bit of difference in space. The new racks are installed, and the locks, if you look on the ends, there are these little tiny locks. And these locks, you literally kick them to push down to control the outsides of the pallets. They're also good guides, too. Now, there's these little red ones on the front, too. And these little red ones on the front, they pop up, and they hold, and they also guide the cargo going in. It's easy that way, because then when the cargo guides in, it's easy enough to guide and lock it. Now, once you go to the nose, and even the loading area, there are guides, and you can push those up to even guide the pallets coming in, make them straight so it's easier to push back. It's such a nice thing. It's such a breeze. It's easily accessible. The only thing that sometimes happens is the bigger cargo can become a pain in the butt sometimes. Once that actually happens, then it's more of a guessing game and a playing game at that point, and it really sucks. The 7.4 has so many different values to it. You know, when you unload one, or if you unload two, it starts becoming easy to use. So like the control box with the load screens on them, and some other things that are contributable to the actual, parts of the aircraft. Now, once you see that the airplane is in a safe enough position, you can kind of tell where to load the pallets. And since this is just the 7.4, the pallets have two different decks. Of course, some of them have bulk in the back. When I mean by bulk, I mean smaller packages and so what. So it's more of the 7.4s have it's easier time of backing up because of the pushback area, but they take a longer time to actually start the engines up because your arms get tired from holding your arms up a lot. And there's a lot of manpower that goes into this stuff, and you gotta get a lot of strength and accuracy in pushing this stuff, because sometimes those control mechanisms will power off and you'll actually have to push the cargo back. Luckily, it hasn't been that hot yet, so it hasn't been really hot inside and so what. So really, that's just a run through of how it is to load the 747 with cargo. Like I said, there's a lot of little knickknacks in there once in a while that you'll need to actually to use to load them. So like what I mean by those, the middle part of the picture shows these guides, and these guides go up every time a pallet goes over. The inside of the wheels, as you can see, those little black rubber parts inside, also contribute to rolling the cargo on the inside. The outside portion of it controls the guide part as well. With that guide rail is, if the pallet is over the guide rail, which happens frequently, you'll either push out or push in to make sure the pallet actually sits on the guide. If it doesn't do that, it's not going to work very well for you. If it doesn't work well for you, it's not going to work well for the airplane as well. We had a pallet today that got caught on the roller itself and got so heavy that it buckled down on the wheel, and the wheel just kept spinning. Once that happens, you can either, like I said before, use another pallet to ram it, or you can put enough weight on it to actually guide it. But if it's that heavy already, I don't think it's going to move. So all in all, the loading process of a 747 isn't that complicated. It just needs a little bit of practice. Once the 747 is loaded up, you have the control doors on the side. You pull the loader out, and you get ready to push back. The 747's got so much room in it that you can literally have 4 guys arm to arm and fully get to that width. It's amazing what it can do as a cargo plane. It's amazing what it can do as a passenger plane. That's really it for the 7.4 loading it up. I mean, there's nothing really much you can do with it other than, it takes a lot of fuel. It's going to need a lot of maintenance once in a while for checks and everything. So it's definitely a plane to, when you first start loading, it can take up to an hour. It can take up to 2 hours. Cathay for us today took about 35 minutes. If you haven't already known, I work for a company that loads the cargo into cargo planes. So anything from 7.4s all the way to 777s, to A300s, to A350s, all the above you can think of for cargo. Of course, this job is very tiresome sometimes, like tonight, as I sound very tired and worn out. It's because I got off my shift about 3 to 4 hours ago, and I'm still worn out from pushing almost 65,000 pounds of cargo. So, I'd like to conclude that tonight. There are some more pictures in here you guys can check out. There's one of newer pallets coming in, taller pallets. Some of these pallets are huge. And when I mean huge, I mean they literally go bottom to top inside the 747. So if any other questions for me, I wish you guys all a great night. I'd like to continue these every other weekend since I have work now. I think my next episode will definitely be on the 777. I'd like to discuss some more things about cargo loading the 777 so you guys understand what actually goes into the fundamentals of cargo loading. There's a lot that goes into it, and I feel like you guys would enjoy the backstory in that. All right, guys, you guys have a great night and enjoy your evening.